Hey guys, good morning. How's everybody doing today? How's your week going? Another beautiful sunny day here in New York. Hopefully, we can hold on to this beautiful summer weather for as long as we can. We had a rough winter. Yeah, how you guys doing today? How's everything going? Wanted to talk to you today about a very special topic that is near and dear to my heart because I lived it for so long and I'm in some ways I'm still living it. And that is, what is the future of project and program management? And I want to talk to you a little bit about what it was like for me in my career and how it's dramatically changed. And I see the change happening now. And I'm very curious as to what you guys think about what the future of it what it will look like. And so a lot of what I used to do was work in big organizations, and somehow a problem would surface, or what they call it a challenge, and or there was a merger and an acquisition. We bought another company, and it would make its way up the chain, a command to my boss or my boss's boss, until I resumed. Later in my career, I kind of had that seat, but in the beginning of my career, it would kind of make its way up the chain and go to my boss as a problem or a new thing we wanted to do, and then they would send me in. And what I would do is I would go sit down with the ops teams, with the product teams, with the tech teams, and I'd write everything down in my notebook. Come back, we'd map out the process and do a whiteboard and type it up in Jira and talk about it. And when we first started out, we used to write a business requirement document, and it was ridiculous. A business requirement document sometimes was like 5 pages. It was like a really big document that, like, once we wrote it, aside from the people that pulled together and wrote it, no one really understood it. And we would spend a lot of time going back to the document and updating it and even pasting in workflows. And it was just like it wasn't a waste of time from my perspective. It was a really wonderful way to learn. But like, when you think about how things work now, it's a complete waste of time. But yeah, and like, that would take months. We'd have meetings with different teams, and every time we changed the document, there were documents that was like, version 25 of the document, and you'd have to circulate the document. And it was before cloud-based computing was big, so who had version 17 and we were on version 25, and it was always very challenging to keep everybody on the same page, make sure they were looking at the same thing. But nowadays, all that goes away. um, you don't really need any of that. You have like a virtual work board that shows what everybody's working on, and you go from what the challenge is, or what the concept of what you want to do, to a prototype in a testing environment in um, a matter of hours, not even days. And so this idea of having someone sit in between and coordinate, try and quarterback and document this stuff is just so antiquated. It's so out of date. It doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is what you hear people call a player coach, meaning someone that's sitting alongside their team and doing the same thing their team is doing, like actually building and prototyping. Because we used to build this huge business requirement doc, and then we have to that requirement doc into manageable working chunks. We'd have to get chunks into a testing environment. We'd have to get everybody access to the testing environment, let them go in there, and then we'd have to do demos. And that would take months before we could then get into production. And then we out in a rollback plan to say, all right, well, even with all this regression testing we did, if we have a problem in production, how do we roll it back fast so that there's no interruption in service from a client's perspective? And we'd work all weekend sometimes. Man, all that stuff goes away. all that stuff goes away. Now we use AI to code. Man, I don't know anybody writing code anymore. I don't know. Do you guys know people writing code? I don't know anybody writing code anymore, man. Even old school stuff like COBOL and C++, like old legacy systems. People aren't writing code anymore. They work with the coding assistant to get them going 90% of the way. They make some small tweaks. The coding assistants review the code, test the code, do the pull requests, update the Jira tickets, write the PRD, the product requirement document, which is we went from, like I said, these huge, massive business requirement documents to this concept of a PRD, which is like a page or two, which just constantly gets updated by AI. And the other powerful thing about AI for the future is like you don't need such a technically heavy staff. Like you don't need this concept of, I got what they would call like pods, which is the stupidest name in the world, but they would call us, we worked in a pod and you had a couple software engineers, a couple designers, your project manager, a couple business analysts, some QA guys, and everyone worked in a pod. It's just working in a group, cross-functional group. And like, you don't need that anymore. You could say like, who's the end user, right? Who's representing the end client? All right. So this is, John. John sits in the marketing team or the product management team, and he is representing the end client. And John has an AI tool or Jane has an AI tool, and they can use that tool to prototype what's in existence to show the change represented as they think the clients would want to see it. And it's done. It's done. Yeah. No back and forth, no tickets, no documentation, no weeks and months of lag and waste and hours. It's done. You have a prototype. What's so important about the prototype in a testing environment is you get everybody together once. They can look at it, they can touch it and feel it, so to speak. They can say, I like this, I don't like this, this works, this doesn't work. And then you roll it out into production. And it's just a seamless interruption in service. And that's the future. That's how I'm seeing the future of things working. That's how I'm seeing things working right now, how they've been working in the past year or two, where all of these administrative processes that we would bog people down with. There was a time I was working in Jira where there were so many different Jira instances and there were 40 different fields on the Jira that we were asking developers to fill out. And I would sit down with my team and they'd be like, Mark, like I can't even fill this ticket out because there's like 40 fields and 25 of them are mandatory. And it was like a nightmare. And that wasn't their job. Their job was to write code, to solve challenges, or to build for the future. Their job wasn't to fill out a DMV form, because that's what it felt. It felt like they were in the DMV getting a ticket, filling out a form. And, back in those days, we would create all kinds of automated rules to help fill out the metadata for them. And, we would work with the different teams to say, like, do we really need all these fields, and try and get those fields reduced? And it was a lot of administrative effort and red tape. All that goes away when you have AI. You have these AI co-pilots, you have Rovo, you have GitHub Copilot, filling out this information for you, pulling it from the code, pulling it from the documentation, and all of the administrative effort is lifted. And where, you'd spend 2 hours a week on admin work, now you're spending maybe 20 minutes. You're going from concept to design to prototype in a matter of hours. And you could do that right in front of the client too. You polish it up, you show the client, you tell the client ahead of time, look, this is a prototype. These are the things we haven't fixed yet. We just wanted to get you in a testing environment so you could look at it, you can feel it. And they appreciate that. They're not waiting forever. And that's kind of how I see the future of things working. How do you guys see it working? I heard someone talk who was on the technical team at Anthropic, real young, smart, savvy person, and they said, "Look, we try to remove as many barriers to production release as possible and have the team as small as possible so that the engineer can release into production as fast as possible. And it just makes sense. Like the concept of quality control was so strong in place for so many years because we were releasing, or not us, but the industry was releasing into production with so many bugs and quirks and shit that didn't work. It was really bad service. And so you needed all this QA, you needed all this regression testing, you needed to check it 4 times. There was automated testing that could just run through the whole UI and click things for you and test it. AI does all that for you now. And it runs through this stuff in a matter of minutes, and it's constantly scanning the code, and it's finding bugs that have been in existence for for 10 years, and it's fixing them. I'm not talking cybersecurity stuff. That's a whole nother bag of worms. I'm not talking cybersecurity, but I'm talking good old fashioned software development, releasing a product, and how long it used to take, and all of the admin work and all of the people we needed just to release something to make sure it worked. If we had 2 or 3 developers, you had QA people testing, and doing regression tests. You had business analysts, analyzing and writing the requirements. You had TPMs coordinating for the teams, for the pods, and then coordinating across departments and across the organization. You had all of these people. You don't need them anymore. It's totally redundant. Now, as you guys listen to my rants, I do not add, laying off massive amounts of people without a plan. I think we need a plan for our people 1,000%. But, you used to need these people. I remember it was like a fight. Like, I need 2 more QA guys. I need someone to run these tests. And you had to fight for resources. And, you got a QA person, and people were stressed, and they were working, and we were all working on the weekends. And, it was very stressful because we were trying to release code in the most perfect way possible so that we didn't have to do a rollback, so there weren't issues. And, we'd have to do a post-mortem if there were. And now all that goes away. I wouldn't say that anyone can be a developer. I wouldn't say that. But I would say that everyone can sit alongside an engineering and development team and go from concept to prototype to hand it off to the development team, to hand it off to the engineering team, which is powerful because trying to get from that concept in someone's head to the prototype was very difficult. Like I said, we had to write these huge documents and do this process mapping, and then try and create mockups. I used to take screenshots of things, create an Excel document, paste the whole Excel document white, paste the picture of the UI. I would create my own buttons and levers and links in Excel so that when you would click it, it would go here and go there. I would show the development team a demo of that. They would then understand, oh, okay, this is what we need to do. And that's how we used to do our prototypes. There were guys on the team that were good at physically drawing. They would draw things. When I think about the way we used to have to prototype, it's insanity today. People were drawing things, trying to show the development team. And even then, as great as the developers were, and I've worked with amazing developers in my career, it was hard for them to conceptualize, all right, how do I go from this concept that's being relayed to me by this middleman into production? Because even if I was the best middleman possible, this assumes that the person explaining it to me knew 100% of what they wanted, and I captured 100% of the requirement, which was never the case. When you'd sit down with a client or an end user or a stakeholder, most of the time they didn't totally know what they wanted. You had to help bring them along the journey. And later on in my career, I developed a product catalog so we could show them, hey, here are some of the options of things we can do for you. And that helped them. But even then, and as good as I was, I couldn't know 100% of what they were thinking. I wasn't a mind reader. And so it was always this disconnect between the concept to the prototype to development, which is why we spent so much time in UAT and testing, and all of that goes away because you now give them a tool that they can spin off into a testing environment, which costs basically nothing. And then they could show you the concept. And no matter how far-fetched their concept is, the AI is so good at creating things that it's so cost efficient that you can build what they want. The client's happy, the stakeholder's happy, and it doesn't cost a lot. Where in the past, when they would have these $1 million dream ideas, the amount of money it would take and the time and development effort to build that, if on average a developer in New York makes $200K a year, 2, 4, 6, 8, you have 5 guys, that's $1 million. That's $1 million a year to update a website, to update a widget, to update a knob, to update a lever, to make a data point available. It was very expensive to do simple things. Now, I mean, come on, what is your AI going to cost you? Two grand a month? You have a super AI agent that's like dual PhD capacity. What does it cost you? 2 grand a month? At the end of the year, what is that? 25 grand versus what? $1 million? Even if you keep one of the devs on hand to manage the different agents running for you, or 2 of the devs on hand, you're saving $500,000 a year. It's a no-brainer. Now, once again, I'm not advocating laying people off, letting them go. You need a plan for the people. Not only do you need a financial plan for people so that they can, afford their mortgage and bills and healthcare and stuff like that, but most people are not like hustle harder, fire under their butt, go all day long. Most people, they need something to do. You got to give them something to do. So we got to figure out a plan for our people. But this future of project and product management is so, it's just so amazing to me that what we can do and what we can create while still keeping all of those very important details. Because when you have like a GitHub Copilot, a Atlassian Rovo, these AI tools, a Claude that sits inside of your Slack window and just does shit for you, excuse my language. Even if you don't highly customize the skills for them, the basic out-of-the-box functionality still keeps all of the records and all of the details, because the old days of having a 10-page business requirement document, a 25-page business requirement document that no one reads, is just completely useless. But having a ticketing system like Jira, a code hub branching system like GitHub that has all this information, and AI is just running around in the background constantly organizing everything, is amazing. And I don't think it's that far away when we stop talking to TPMs and engineers and we start talking to agents, where the client, the stakeholder, interacts with an agent themselves. That agent coordinates the engineering, coordinates the design, coordinates the UAT, and in a matter of minutes produces that. The client says yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and it's done. And the agent says, do you want me to roll this out into production? Do you want me to do all the compliance checks, make sure the documentation's in place, do all the regression testing? They're like, yup, boom. And now a client goes from idea to prototype to production in minutes. And I think that's the future we're gearing towards. Once again, we need a plan for what we're going to do with all those people that are going to be displaced. But I think that's the future. Not where everyone is a software engineer. I don't think everyone wants to be an engineer, a developer. But everyone has a tool, a magic hammer, so to speak, that can just build anything. Because we've trained ourselves to think that, like when I was a kid, we had computer lab once a week. And that computer lab from once a week, where they would teach us how to use a home row keys and teach us how the computer worked and how the OS worked and how to use applications. We went from that once a week. By the time I got into college, because I was a business and tech major, the majority of all of my classes were on the computer. And so I had to learn all of these things, like how does the operating system work? How do these applications work? How do you package an application? How do you roll out an application? How do you set up a server? How do you set up a load balance? Like I had to worry about all this stuff. It doesn't matter. Why do I need to worry? Why does anyone need to worry about that? That's not what you care about. You care about, does it work? Does it work? Does it do what I want it to do? Does it look the way I want it to look? Um, that's really what people care about. And so I spent probably most of my education and most of my career worrying about, and all of us did, and trying to figure out all of these things that it's not that they don't matter, but in simple terms, like I don't know how to create a cylinder for my engine. I don't know the timing and the firing of the cylinders of my engine. And I don't need to know. I need to know how to drive the car, how to put the key in the car, how to obey the rules of the road, and how to have a nice drive. And that's it. And so the future of product management and project management, I think, is so amazing with what we can do and how fast we can do things and how much it's so much more cost effective. Um, but what do you guys think? I'd love to carry on this conversation with you. Tell me what you think. As I like to say, as always, um, you guys may not be hiring yourselves, but you probably know someone who knows someone that is, and put me in touch with them because I'm looking for full-time roles. Remember to hustle harder, and let's talk again soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.